All right, we're back once again. Roundtable 99. We got one more to get to the big 100, the anniversary show, baby. And I've been on every single goddamn one of them. Where's my watch, D-Style? Where's my watch?
I
All
don't
right.
got it. I don't. I can't do the $20 million watching for me like Mayweather has for you. Sorry.
Jesus Christ, don't even bring that up. All right, we got a great panel as always. We got D-Style Boxing in the house as always. Got the mighty Ring IQ back with us. Dangerous Dave has graced us with his presence. He is back. The OG veteran is back. And Lee Groves from Ring Magazine. Always a pleasure to have him on. Well, let's get started with this shocker. Shakur Stevenson did not make weight in his 130-pound title. It's going to be vacated, and Robson-Conceicao is the only man that can win this title. I was surprised when I heard this news, man. Dave, let's start with you, brother. What do you think of this matchup, and is this going to have any impact on how this fight plays out on Saturday, in your opinion?
I don't think it makes an impact at all. Robinson, he's got to have Stevenson in front of him in order to land those shots that he wants to throw. Does it slow down Stevenson? No. I think this is his way of just saying I'm exiting out of the division and moving up. It's really about it. I mean, some fighters, they fight for a long time to stay at a weight division so they can make the impact, and then eventually their body is just like, you know what? I got to move up. And that's it. End of story. That's what I got off of it.
Got you. Lee, what do you think of this? Were you surprised at all? And do you think that this will have any impact on the fight?
I wasn't really surprised in that, I've heard rumblings that when he was fighting at 126 pounds and before his fights at 130, that he had problems squeezing his body down. But he always made weight. And the fact that he didn't this time was a little bit surprising. But if you knew the history of how things went with Shakur at lower weights, it had to catch up with him sometime. He's 25 years old. He's entering his chronological prime. He's growing into his body. I think once everything is said and done, he's going to be fighting at welterweight, I think. And so, I think that the time was right for him to move up to 135. Unfortunately, it's happening one fight too soon, and he's going to have to drop his belts, and he's going to have to give some of his money to Conceicao. Pretty sad state of affairs, unfortunately.
Ring, can Conceicao pull off the upset here?
Oh, no. They got a very similar base style. Both Robson and Shakur, they're both pure boxers. I just feel that Shakur does everything better than Conceicao, so I don't think it's going to have any effect on the fight. Being honest, I don't think it's going to have any effect on his career. He's been hinting that this is going to be his last fight at 130 for months. Like, he's been saying it. He said, if my next fight after Conceicao is not a unification match, I'm not coming back to 130. So I wasn't really surprised that he missed the weight, because it's like, oh, well, he probably just said, fuck it, because I'm not going to be here for these belts anyway. So I wasn't surprised, but it still is unprofessional, and that needs to be said. It's unprofessional because Robson did make the weight, and you didn't. So that is like, you can't explain that away, that like, it's probably not going to have any consequences on your career. It probably is not going to have no consequences on the fight, but it still is unprofessional because he made the weight. He made the effort. You did not.
D-Style, is this going to be an advantage for Shakur or a disadvantage for Shakur? And what do you think is going through Conceicao's mind now that he's going to have to be in there with a guy who's probably going to be significantly bigger than him on the night of the fight?
I mean, he must be wondering, what is it about me that these guys are either taking stimulants or they're just not making a weight when they fight me? I don't know. But look, here's the bottom line. People were crucifying Valdez for the stimulant. I criticized him. I felt he should have been stripped, quite frankly, but he wasn't. All right. I get the whole argument that if it was USADA, but it wasn't, it was VADA, I don't give a shit. But at the end of the day, what's the advantage of the stimulant to make weight? What's the advantage? You don't need to work as hard as your opponent to make the weight. At the end of the day, that's an advantage, right? So what's the difference between that and just not bothering making the weight? It's the same thing. You get the same advantage really on fight night. So I would say, yes, it is an advantage. We're going to call out guys that use stimulants to make the weight because they can't make it naturally. We got to call out the guys that are not even bothering making it because they can't make it naturally. Because in the end, they're getting the same advantage. So that's what I will say about that. And I hope people keep it consistent about that. Also, I criticize all fighters that don't make weight. You're fighting at a championship level. And, I mean, you're going to get in this guy's face and talk all that shit. You're not even going to make weight. I mean, that's a little interesting to me, but it's just my opinion. Does it change the skill set here? Does it change the fact that I'm still favoring Shakur to win? Absolutely not. I still see this as an 8-4 fight. I think Shakur's going to have a great performance. I think everybody will be over it, and once he moves up and competes at 135, and that'll be that. You know, it's only the first time. It's not a pattern of behavior, so I don't want to get too harsh about it. But at the end of the day, he should move up, and if he continues fighting at 130, which I doubt, I mean, you can't allow this to keep happening. You know what I mean? But also my thoughts on it: 8-4 Shakur, and yeah, he's gonna get the slap in the wrist. It is what it is, but it's more money in Conceicau's pocket, though.
Yeah, Lukey, what are your thoughts on this matchup, and how do you see this fight playing out? Do you think this whole weight controversy is going to have any impact?
I mean, I'm disappointed for Shakur. Shakur is one of the two fighters that I'm most excited about, him and Boots Ennis. But at the same time, when you have an opportunity to be a world champion in your hometown, you don't get that many of those opportunities, even if you're a great fighter. And to lose a hometown world title fight, that's something that you don't know if that's going to happen again or as soon as you want. This matchup, I think, is an interesting matchup because Conceicao, on a spiritual level, I don't think is intimidated by Shakur. I think there is a talent gap and there are physical limitations, but I do think that he's going in to win. And I don't think his body language is going to get deterred in this fight if he's losing. So he's going to be a guy that comes from the first round to the 12th round to win, unless Shakur gives him a very big unanswerable question that he then decides to survive in the fight, which I don't see. I think this is a challenging fight, but I think that this is going to be clouded by Shakur missing weight and probably winning the fight more so than any outcome inside the ring.
Yeah. The big problem I have with the whole situation is I have a feeling, and this is just my opinion, obviously I don't know for sure, but I think he knew all along he was never going to make weight for this fight. And he realized that, you know, I'm moving up regardless. So let me just get this one fight in. Now, like I think D-Style said this, the shitty part about the whole thing is Conceicao was under the impression that you were going to make weight. And this was going to be like, it still is going to be a title fight for Conceicao. But him not making weight does kind of take some of the shine off of the fight. And it brings controversy into the fight. And it makes it more about him than actually the fight itself. And I think Conceicao, you know, has to deal with that as well. And I don't think that's fair to him that he was blindsided like this the day of the weigh-in, because this I think, you know, was something that was brewing through the whole camp. Like, you know what's going on in your camp. You kind of get a sense of where you are and where you're going to be. And, you know if you're going to make weight or not. It's a given. You've been doing this too long. So that's the only thing that I can really say that was kind of shitty on Shakur's part, that he duped Conceicao into thinking that he was going to make weight, and he did not. You know, so
just if I could put a little input on that. It's also going to be Conceicau's job to make Shakur Stevenson regret not making that weight. You know, let's just say the assumption is he did try and just couldn't do it. His body rejected it. So those extra pounds that he couldn't get off, he's going to come in heavier. So Robson's job is to cut that ring off, make that ring a lot smaller than what they're getting, and be able to get in the inside, which Valdez wasn't able to do. That's why I honestly don't think the weight or anything affects Shakur, because I expect him to move and, control that ring generalship. It's going to be really up to Robson to dictate, be first, and let his hands go when they're in between and punch in between those punches. I just don't see him doing that.
I agree. I just want to say that Shakur missing the weight, while Conceicao was duped, this still is an opportunity for Robson to fight for 2 alphabet titles. Had they made a decision to have this contest above 130, no titles. So it still benefits Robson-Conceicao. Do I think he's going to win? No, he doesn't have that other gear that I think Shakur has. But the situation, like, I don't want to make it more than what it is, because he said this, and he said this weeks ago. He's been saying it consistently. I'm moving up, and it'll be sooner than you think.
Right.
Those are literally his words.
Right.
So it's kind of like for Robson to get this opportunity to fight for 2 alphabet titles. This is kind of how it had to happen, because if they would have did it above 130, there is no title fight. So, you know, it is shitty that Shakur didn't make the weight. It's shitty, but it's not as shitty as it's made out to be, because Robson's not a small 130. You know, he's got some size. He'll be all right. He's a big boy. He'll be all right.
Didn't he turn pro at 35 against Clay third-degree burns?
Yeah.
Well, and on a positive note, both guys get a payday and the fight's not scrapped. So that's the positive thing. But let me just read this super chat. I don't know if I want to thank D-Style for this or not, but he says 100 plus years of boxing knowledge on this panel, and 50 of those are from B Balloon. 53. 53.
Oh, shit.
Holy smokes.
Oh, shit.
Could I add something about how I think the fight's going to turn out? I don't think I addressed that. I think Conceicao is very good. He's taller, he's longer, he has excellent work rate, and in his last fight against Xavier Martinez, I think he addressed a couple of the issues that cost him against Oscar Valdez, particularly the second half fade. I think against Martinez, he was actually stronger down the stretch. But while Conceicao is very good, Shakur appears to be great. Joe Tessitore was on our podcast a few weeks earlier, and he believes that 5 years from now, it's going to be Shakur who's going to be the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. And I agree with him. I think when all is said and done, you know, Shakur, I think, is going to be the aggressor, because he is going to have to come to Conceicao to score his points. And I think the hometown crowd, he's going to feed off the energy of the hometown crowd. I think he's going to hit the body. He's become a pretty good body puncher in his last few fights. He's gonna really like that long torso, and I think there's a possibility he could score a late round TKO with attrition. But I agree, if it goes on points 8-4, Shakur Stevenson. He's just not that Conceicao's bad, but Shakur is really, really good on offense and on defense.
Well, you know, obviously styles make fights. Do you guys think that Conceicao matches up against Shakur Stevenson better than Valdez did? Do you think this would be a better fight than the Valdez fight? Does anyone agree or disagree with that?
More difficult, because you can control Valdez. Shakur is a stylistic, and I think we talked about it here that for Oscar, that's a stylistic nightmare, and it's not because Oscar's not good. Oscar's good, but that's a stylistic nightmare for him. Whereas with this, you got 2 pure boxers. Now, which one is going to make the decision to be the aggressor? That depends on who you ask. It could be Shakur, it could be Conceicao, but those 2 guys with that style, I think we're going to get a nice little fight, and I think that Shakur's going to have to work for it, perhaps more than he did with Oscar, because I don't know that he can control this guy as easily as he was able to control Oscar. He had a lot of advantages in that fight that he doesn't have here. You're not the longer guy, you're not the taller guy. You got the same style as this guy, and while you're better with that style, you are better, you are smaller. So we'll see how that breaks down, how that plays out.
I think Shakur just got to look for that. He's got to be kind of wary of that uppercut when he's coming in, because that's one punch that Robson's going to throw. You know, and going with Valdez, I think the problem with Valdez is that you never know what we're going to get, you know. So I think it's kind of hard to make comparisons with Valdez, you know. So, yeah, I'd see a different fight. But I see a fight where a guy, if he doesn't catch up to him, close that distance or back up Shakur, he's not going to be able to get those hands. He's not going to be able to let those hands go and hit his target.
Yeah, I just think the big difference in the fight will be in comparison to Valdez is Conceicao is a better counterpuncher than Valdez, and I think he has better footwork as well. But we'll see how this thing plays out. Well, let's move on to the next topic, man. Big fight this past weekend, Canelo-Golovkin III. A lot of people have criticized both men's performance, particularly Canelo, because Canelo was supposed to shine in this fight and won wide on the scorecards, but fight wasn't as aesthetically pleasing as we thought it would be, as exciting as we thought it would be. Did Alvarez impress, do you guys think, or do you think that this was just a lackluster affair for him? We'll start with you, D-Style.
I think Valdez. I'm sorry, Valdez. Canelo. I think Canelo did enough to win the fight. I think the first half he looked great. He did slow down in the second half, but I still think he clearly won the second half as well. It was just more competitive. Golovkin brought it. You know, the old man just you know, that's what veteran fighters do. They pull rabbits out of their hats. You know what I mean? But I gave Canelo about, you know, if I had to grade him, I'll give him a B. You know, it's not his best performance, but it was enough to win, you know. But he looked tired, though. He looked tired at the weigh-in. He looked tired post-fight. He just looks tired. He looks fed up. You know, that's just how he looks. He's got this chip on his shoulder despite being the biggest name, especially in this part of the hemisphere. And yet he's got this chip on his shoulder right now. And I think he's going to come back next year with a vengeance after some rest. But the fight itself, I mean, it was definitely the less eventful of the three fights for sure. Like without a shadow of a doubt, the less competitive of the three fights for sure. So it was what it was. A little disappointing. However, I mean, they make up for it with atmosphere, right? I mean, there was a good atmosphere. There was a lot of people there. And I think Canelo's still showing that he's still bringing the crowd. I mean, people are ragging on the event, but it did 22 million at the gate. 22 million at the gate is more than the second fight with Tyson Fury Wilder did.
It's more than the third one too.
It's more than the third one too, absolutely. You know, but because I think wasn't the second one a higher gate? I could be wrong about that, but
I remember the number
19
being
million.
between 13 and 19 for the second one. Though overall, you're absolutely right. This fight did a bigger gate than both of those fights. Bigger gate than both.
So I'll just end it with this. I think obviously people are going to be disappointed. I know some casual friends that were not happy with the fight. But at the end of the day, like I don't think it was to the point where they never want to see Canelo again or something. You know what I mean? It wasn't to that degree. It was an uneventful fight for sure.
So let me ask you this: are you gonna like call up the zone and tell them that you got like a sketchy picture so you can get a refund, or are you gonna roll with the 65? You happy? You spent the 65?
I can't. They're gonna go to my Twitter and be like, "How are you scoring round by round? If you had a sketchy picture, you know what I mean? What's going on over here?" So I can't do it. I'm not you that try that. I know what you do.
I would never do that. That's character assassination.
Right.
Don't even accuse me of doing that. I buy every pay-per-view. I bought Roy Jones versus Bobby Gunn, please.
He gets one little pixel, and he calls his cable provider.
But Beeb, did you get Roy Jones versus Bernard Hopkins too?
I did. I bought every single pay-per-view, man. I must have spent $1,000 on pay-per-views in my life.
You got Roy Jones, Bobby Gunn, brother.
I go to therapy for it. So what did you think of Canelo? Did he impress, or did he look less than desirable in your opinion? Did he look?
I mean, it was just like Lethal Weapon 4. It was like Canelo was good, right? He was fine. Golovkin's kind of old. And it was like fun to see him in the ring again. It wasn't the best version of either guy, like when they're facing each other. But it's sometimes it's fun to see a classic matchup where I've spent 10 years of my life watching these fighters and to see them fight again. Because how many times is Golovkin gonna have a fight at a normal time for me in the US on the West Coast? And I can tune in and watch it. And that White Stripes song comes on. This is probably one, or if not one of the last times that'll ever happen. And to have Canelo in the ring and just to see them fight, that was good enough for me. Was it a great fight? Not really. Did I have much expectation? No, I viewed it like The Hangover 3. I viewed it like the third installment of a movie. I didn't have much expectation of it being a great fight. It wasn't a great fight. I'm sure Canelo's still a great fighter. Golovkin's still a great fighter. It just didn't make for a good fight because they're always going to negate each other. Because they always have ways of kind of making each other not do what the other one does well.
Gotcha. Dave, what were your thoughts on Canelo and Golovkin?
Well, let me see. How was it was that Saturday night. I was in San Jose, my hometown, I wasn't rushing back to the valley to watch it, so that kind of tells you where I was at, and mindset wise. But you know what? When I started watching it, it just kind of took me back when Canelo fought Cotto. Didn't do a whole lot. Was okay of not hurting his opponent. It was okay of letting the older, shop-worn champion survive. And in a lot of ways, I just thought he carried it all the way to the 12th round. That's what I witnessed that night. Was Canelo decided to carry him and didn't want to stop him and said, "Okay, I'm going to give you a mercy. I'm going to give you a couple of mercy rounds because, to be honestly, Golovkin didn't start letting his hands go until the 10th round. It took him 9 rounds to start warming up. So that's where I was at.
Yeah. Lee, what did you think of the fight, and were you disappointed in the performance of both guys?
It depends on the context. It was impressive in that, for me, it was the only one of the 3 fights that Canelo won clearly. I had the first fight scored for Golovkin pretty wide. I had Golovkin winning the second fight like 7-5. Canelo fought a lot better, but I still thought Triple G won. Here, I scored the fight 118-110. I had Canelo winning each of the first 8 rounds, and then Golovkin kicked up into another gear, and it was more competitive down the stretch, 2-2 in the last 4 rounds. So the fact that he has a definitive win over Golovkin was impressive in comparison to how he performed in the other 2 fights in my eyes. But that said, if you're looking at it from an expectation standpoint, when the fight was announced as part of the 2-fight deal with DAZN, where he had Bivol first and Triple G second, Canelo was the #1 pound-for-pound fighter on most lists. He was freshly minted, undisputed super middleweight champion, and he was talking about fighting Junior Makabu for the WBC cruiserweight title. He was talking about a catchweight with Usyk for the heavyweight title. And people weren't totally dismissing him in those fights. So he was really thought of at a really, really high level. And they thought that, I thought the Bivol fight would be much more competitive. Triple G was thrown in as the second fight because DAZN promised Triple G that, you sign with us, you're going to get that 3rd fight. They're just fulfilling the promise to Triple G. And most people thought it was going to be a sad spectacle, Canelo cherry picking a 40-year-old man, moving up in weight class. Not a lot of expectations were held at that time of the announcement. And if you can compare Canelo's performance last Saturday to that standard, it was disappointing. Ring Magazine did not move Canelo up its pound-for-pound rankings, even though he beat Gennady Golovkin. He didn't put an exclamation point on the fight. He faded late. And because of that, many people came away disappointed, less than totally satisfied. The big beef was not that Canelo won, but that the judges scored it much closer than many thought it should have been. But in terms of the expectations game, scores like 116-112 and 115-113 twice, I think it's pretty indicative of at least how people felt about how the fight was in line with the expectations game. He didn't slam the door, and now people are talking about showing signs of slippage instead of him being the supreme fighter that he was less than a year ago.
Yeah, good take, Lee. Ring, what were your thoughts on Canelo and Golovkin?
Well, didn't live up to my expectations, but because I've been a boxing fan for so long, I'm not one for knee-jerk reactions. Do I think the average boxer can go in there and win 9 rounds against today's Gennady Golovkin? No. If that were Andre, would I pick him to beat that Golovkin? No. If that were Charlo, would I pick him to beat that Golovkin? No. So for me, context matters more than knee-jerk reactions in the moment or emotional stuff at the time. The fact of the matter is Canelo Alvarez has a decisive victory over his arch nemesis. It wasn't a hard fight to score. And what people don't want to understand, I'm glad that somebody brought it up, the Cotto fight. Many people were expecting the Cotto fight to be a firefight, not understanding these are two skilled guys. They don't make the mistake somebody else makes to where a stupid punch lands and somebody hits the deck. They're both very good. So they don't afford themselves that opportunity to land them big punches the way a lesser boxer would. So what I saw Golovkin doing in there, well, you didn't want to shoot the right hand because you're afraid you're going to get countered. You're afraid that if you commit to a power shot, he's going to come back with something. So it was smart on Golovkin to look, I'm old. I can't match his output anymore. I can't pump out the jab 2 times the middleweight average anymore. Some of these rounds, I'm just going to have to survive. But you saw Canelo in spots I saw a 3-piece combination from Canelo. Beautiful combination. And Gennady still got that cast iron chin. He took it. Took the shots. So for me, no, it didn't live up to my expectations. Was it a bad fight? I've seen worse. Bartholomew versus Easter was 10 times worse than this. This was a nice little fight, albeit an expensive fight, but I don't know. I'm not emotional like some other people. Maybe it's because watching the fight made me over $100, so I'm not really mad. I made money from the fight, but that wasn't a bad fight. It wasn't great. It just wasn't great. Wasn't great at all, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah. You know, when the fight was first announced as part of the deal for Canelo, I wasn't excited about it. But as always, the closer these fights get, and watching the promotion and these guys, they always suck me in, right? And I got excited for it. I was like, I started buying into it. The trilogy, let's go. But going into this fight, I never expected a knockout. A lot of people were saying Canelo was going to knock him out. I just think like the way these two guys match up against each other, they kind of know each other well, and it's just hard for the other guy to really gain a significant advantage enough to hurt the other guy and get him out, right? One thing I was very shocked at was I thought Golovkin had a little bit more than he showed, and again, age catches up with everybody, and that's just the way it is, right? Those years you can't get back, they're gone. I did kind of see him go into survival mode a little bit in points of the fight. And I think, Ring, you hit the nail on the head. Maybe he wanted to kind of conserve himself, because if he went balls to the walls from Jump Street, he wouldn't have had anything left. So he had to pace himself. He knew that, right? And he had his moments. I thought I gave him round 9, 10, and 11 on my card, right? You could argue maybe he got the first as well. So that's 4 rounds. 8-4 is not a bad. I had it 9-3, but it's not impossible to score at 8-4. What I do think the judges did in this fight was there was so much emphasis on, the judges favor Canelo, they favor Canelo. So they went the other way. They tried to favor maybe Golovkin a little bit so they wouldn't be the focal point of the fight at the end, right? They didn't want to be the ones being criticized. They didn't want to hear it again. So I think they went the other way this time. So that's why I think the scorecards were as close as they were, because I think they kind of went out of the way to do that. But at the end of the day, I thought this was a 9-3 fight. Most people had it 9-3. Could you go 10-2? Yeah. Could you go 8-4? Yeah, maybe. But I think the general consensus was this was a 9-3-ish type fight. And on paper, that's a pretty decisive victory. Thing is a lot of people.
I want to say this. Judging from how Gennady Golovkin is now talking, I'm not going to say I think he threw the fight. I don't believe he threw the fight, but I do believe he went in there like, I'm not going to go in here getting hit a lot. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take more punishment, because he knew there was another side to the fight, another side to his career. Given the payday, hey, I can fucking lose to Canelo, bro. What the fuck is that to me? This is the pound for pound numero whatever right now, right? Me losing to him don't mean jack motherfucking shit. So I feel like he went in there, he assessed, he looked like, I can't keep up with him. He's too fast. So I'm going to survive. I'm going to survive, and I'm going to make it. And you know what? He made it. He made it, the old guy. Credit to him, because Callum Smith didn't make – well, Callum did, but Billy Joe Saunders didn't go the distance. Motherfucking Caleb Plant didn't go the distance. So credit to the old-timer. How many people could go 12 with Canelo at 68?
Yeah.
Well, can I add something?
Of course. Go ahead.
To me, it looked like Golovkin was looking to shoot a straight right hand, or they had worked on that, and he never led with the right hand. So there was like a lot of middle ground where it looked like he felt like he was winning those early rounds, but he wasn't winning those early rounds. And I thought JB, Jonathan Banks, was coaching a good corner fight, but Golovkin just wasn't seemingly doing what maybe they had been working on in camp. And I think that also was an issue. I don't know if that's age or whatever, but it just looked like for some reason what was being worked on in the gym didn't apply itself to the fight.
Yeah.
Not being consistent, age, the speed of Canelo, the power being Canelo being more comfortable at 168. I think that all comes into play. You know, the other thing that I saw was Canelo's kind of falling into that, throwing one big punch, like, every 30, 45 seconds. I think that allowed Triple G to survive. But I think a lot of people were kind of, swaying on the side that Canelo can stop Triple G because of the body shots. And again, there was no body work from Canelo. It was like here and there, but it stopped. But I also got to put in consideration, he did say he hurt his hand. So maybe that's why he didn't put that much pressure on Triple G.
The wrist.
Yeah, because what I saw was early on, Canelo was trying for the body shots, but he was trying with the right for the body shots, and they were sailing around Golovkin's back. And I'm like, I don't know, why is he not shooting the left hook to the body to hit him right in the fucking abdomen? And then it came out, well, he hurt his left hand, so he probably couldn't do that, which I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense, because I was expecting more body work. That's what I was expecting. Yeah. He just kept shooting that right, and Golovkin, he's a wily coyote, keeps the elbow tucked, turns the shit, sails around his back, doesn't land flush. I'm like, I will shoot for the left fucking hook then to the body. Try the left for the body. And he only did that once, but he really got Golovkin's attention with it when he did it. I don't know if that's when he heard it, but I only saw him throw a left to the body once the whole fight. And then, comes out, oh, well, my left hand is messed up, my wrist. I need surgery. I'm like, see, that makes sense, because I was wondering about that. Where's the left hook to the body?
Yeah, and that's where the wrist comes into play significantly, because when you're digging that, your wrist has to brace your, your fist tight when you land that shot. I just want to address one thing. A lot of people will complain that Canelo gets criticized unfairly, and I just think that comes with the territory because of the position he's in. When you're at the top like that, the expectations for you are going to be higher than everyone else. And if you look at the top 10 in that super middleweight division, none of those guys have resumes that can even touch Canelo's. So when people will say, well, what has this guy done? What has that guy done? Well, if you're going to use that logic, no one in the top 10 has done what Canelo's done. So, if these guys have to fight each other and they have to, basically have a super six to get the right to fight Canelo, then who's Canelo going to fight? That's my only argument, So I don't think any of these guys, regardless of who they are, can touch Canelo in terms of resume. When you look at the top 10's last 6 opponents, none of them guys have lit the world on fire. So that's the dilemma we're going to have. But people are going to look at Canelo differently. It's like Jeff Bezos, he's the big guy at Amazon. So when Amazon does something bad or whatever, obviously the spotlight's going to be on Jeff Bezos and Amazon, more so than the mom and pop guy that owns a little variety store. He can do the same thing that Jeff Bezos does, but obviously he's Jeff Bezos. He's up here, the other guy's down here. So it's the same logic with Canelo. So Canelo, because he's in that, anyone that was in that spot always got criticized.
Yeah. I mean, that's Floyd, bro. That's Floyd. That's Oscar. That's it's occupational hazard, bro. Always has been.
It is. So and some of it is kind of ridiculous. I know there are some people that go over the top with it, but my whole thing is the expectations you have for Canelo obviously going to be higher than the other guys, because he's was at one point the best fighter in boxing. So he was labeled, right? And he's the face of boxing. So obviously the spotlight's going to be on him. So I just wanted to say that, because I hear a lot, oh, why is this guy don't get criticized like Canelo? Well, because he's not Canelo. That's why. That's just simple and plain.
I tell you what, that's a tough old bastard he fought on Saturday. Because based on what I saw, I was looking to see, like, could Charlo get this guy? Could Saunders get this guy? I was really, I thought about it, like, before I look at Canelo funny for not stopping this man, I'm trying to think, who would I pick to stop him short of a light heavyweight? Who would I pick to
He's never
stop?
been stopped in 350 amateur fights and 44 professional fights. So, the record speaks for itself. He's got a heck of a chin.
And
He's never been set
he's
down.
got great fundamentals too, because what people don't notice is, man, that dude keep that chin tucked, bro. Ain't no jostling of the head, ain't none of that. He keep it tucked, keep the shoulder high. Everything is working. Like I noticed a lot of people, maybe they didn't know how to interpret his skills, or maybe what they think are skills. Maybe it's not actually skills. Like what you're talking about is flashy stuff, but basic things like keeping that chin tucked, that's a fucking skill that Ryan Garcia needs to learn, because his chin is way out there whenever he shoots a left hook. Like Golovkin, he keep that motherfucker tucked. That's why he can eat them right hands. That's why, because his head ain't jostling when he does get hit with a right hand. Smart guy, tough old bastard.
He has a very solid defensive construct, without question.
Yeah.
He really does.
Hey, Beeb, do you think part of the problem too was like Golovkin in a lot of his fights, he's never had to adjust midway? Like he was the Terminator in a lot of fights. Like with Sergey Derevyanchenko, he'd come to Sergey, but when Sergey had success, he'd turn him and then he'd go back to turning, and Golovkin separated in that fight. But the problem was he kind of comes to you in the Canelo fights. Canelo came to him. I feel like Canelo kind of threw off Golovkin boxing him a bit, because it looked like he was kind of looking for Canelo to be more aggressive and kind of do his thing off of that. And I think another thing I guess I've never seen or been astute enough to see is Golovkin's a guy that's never had to adjust mid-fight, and it felt like there was no adjustment for him in this fight.
He adjusted in the mid-fight in the rematch with Canelo. I mean, remember, he was coming forward. I mean, Canelo was coming forward. He had to,
the
become
box,
the
yeah.
boxer.
Didn't
Yeah.
Canelo start somewhat coming forward rather early, like maybe second, third round?
Well, let me say this, Suki. I'll say that Golovkin, and I do agree with your contention, he hasn't had to adjust. You don't have to adjust to a Dominic Wade or a Willie Monroe or a Matthew Macklin or a Martin Murray. Those aren't the guys that are going to make you adjust. Now with Jacobs, yeah, you had to work with Jacobs. You had to work. Mm-hmm. So I feel that he got accustomed to getting a certain outcome at a certain point in a fight. And I'm also going to say that, look, Canelo's not the best in-fight adjustment guy either, because if he were, fucking Bivol fight, he would have adjusted. So, not everybody has that. I don't hold it against them, because fighters are built differently. I don't hold it against them. But in-fight adjustments, I don't know that either Canelo or Golovkin are the guys for in-fight adjustments.
Isn't that why the fight was awkward a little bit? Was we were kind of like, part of what we were waiting on was an adjustment, and we never really got an adjustment from either guy?
Here's the problem, because Golovkin's never been the quickest guy in the world. I mean, obviously he's decent compared to the average fighter, but when you talk about the top tier guys, he's not a speed demon in comparison to a guy like Jacobs, Canelo, or even some of the other guys at super middleweight, right? He's never what his game relied mostly on was timing, right? And as you get older, what's the first thing to go is your timing and your reflexes, right? So that's where I think made for a very difficult fight this time around, as opposed to the first two, because timing was off. Because Canelo always had the quicker hands, right? But what helped Golovkin was his timing, right? You know how to time, you how to punch in between the other guys' combinations. He just had that. He had that sense. He had that timing, the sense, presence of mind, when to throw punches and when not to throw punches.
The Golovkin that we all remember was a Golovkin who had a hell of an engine, threw the jab 2 times the middleweight average, and we keep looking for that, and it's like, no, that's gone, bro. And honestly, it's been gone since Steve Rolls, because that's when I noticed the change in him, that he's not doing the same things with his lead hand that he used to. He used to punish guys with that jab, just that jab.
And the creative offense, punching around the guard, setting up, throwing away punches to set up offensively. One of the most gifted modern offensive fighters.
Yeah. That chopping right hand that descends. He doesn't shoot it straight. It descends on you. I haven't seen him throw one of those in a while. Well, no, I think he threw one in the Murata fight, matter of fact.
Yeah, he threw a few of those in the Murata fight.
Yeah, in the Murata fight. I forgot about that fight. But yeah, he's just, he's an old guy. He's not the same guy that he used to be. But I don't see cannon fodder yet, which is why I give Canelo Alvarez credit for winning 9 rounds against a guy who I think can still go to middleweight and beat up a lot of fucking middleweights. I don't see nobody down there. I mean, maybe Yanni Beck, but not even, because they're not going to fight. They got the whole I look up to you thing going on. That's what Yanni Beck said. So,
So with that being said, let's move on to the next topic. Where do these guys go? Where does Canelo go? Where does Golovkin go? Does Golovkin go back down to 160, defend his titles? What's next for Canelo? What's next for Golovkin? Let's bounce it right back to you, Ring, since you brought it up.
I think, on my honest opinion, I want Canelo to take a year to 2 years off. Floyd did it. Fury did it. I feel the sport needs it because people aren't fighting because they're waiting for him. They're not fighting each other at or around 60 and 68 because they're waiting for him. And that's ridiculous. There are 5 and 6 of you waiting for one guy. You can't all stand single file playing it safe so you can get the same opportunity. So I would prefer, go away for a year, vacate them titles, whatever. When you come back, hopefully somebody will have established themselves as some kind of something and you can fight them. That makes sense to me. Meanwhile, for Golovkin, if Chris Eubank Jr. beats Conor Ben, I need Golovkin to beat the hell out of that guy. I want him to go to UK, beat the hell out of that guy on Sky Sports. He could fight Esquiva Falcao. I believe he's in line by way of the IBF, Brazilian Olympian. He could fight that guy. That's a good little fight. In terms of paydays, there are not that many left. Munguia is a possibility, though. But can Munguia still make 160? That's the other thing. Can he make it? If you can make Munguia versus Golovkin, people will buy that fucking fight, bro. On Cinco de Mayo, they'll buy that fucking fight, bro. Because either Munguia is going to retire this old bastard or maybe Golovkin can old man him. But if I tell somebody Munguia versus Golovkin, Cinco de Mayo, they're going to buy that fucking fight, bro. They're going to buy that.
Yeah. Dave, what do you think, man? What should either one of these guys do? You think Golovkin's done? Who do you want to see Canelo fight next?
Listen, no more questions. I'm a little mad and I'm a little tired. And no, I think he's already made his outline of what he's going to do next. He's hoping to get the winner of Bivol and Ramirez. He's leaning with Bivol. I think I'm leaning with Bivol to win that fight. So I expect him to be back summertime of next year. Triple G, man, honestly, off of that performance, to me, it's a mirage. If I was him, I'd just hang him up. I just don't see off that performance, man, that these younger guys, Canelo's not that young, and Canelo is more of a thinker, and he's going to take his time as a surgeon. A lot of these other guys are going to use their athleticism, and I'm not sure if Triple G at 40 can keep off these more athletic guys off of him at this moment. I think he's already proved enough what he can, and the inconsistency in his career, you could see it's caught up to him, like mentioned earlier, the jabs, just not seeing that work rate that he had at one time. It's not there anymore, and I saw more enthusiasm off of him at the end in the post interview talking about, you're going to see me still, I'm not going to retire. Well, for 4 years, didn't really do much.
Manín, él sabía. Eso es lo que yo estoy. He knew that he was going to be, he knew that, like, yo, I'm not going to risk nothing in here. I'm going to chill. I'm going to survive.
Look, it was a business move, but honestly, it hurt him. That business move hurt him. I mean, look how he looked. You imagine if he would have stayed consistent. Imagine if he would have fought more and took those risks the way he used to do. Remember, #all the bouts. Remember that. That's what his whole tag was about, Mexican style. Well, he kind of, after Abel Sanchez, he drifted away from that, and it cost him. And now age and everything else along with it has caught him. And I just think why, like Steve Kim just said, there's no gold watches at the end of your career. And I just think at 40, why risk it anymore? You got enough money. Just ride into the sunset.
Bueno, I mean, yo veo Jaime Munguia, ¿verdad? I see Jaime Munguia, guy who went the distance with Gabe Rosado, and I'm like, it's not a foregone conclusion that you beat Golovkin. We might have a little nice fight here if we can get you down to 60. You need a title, and you don't seem to want to fight Charlo, or Oscar doesn't want you. I should say Oscar, because I don't actually believe Munguia is afraid of any of these guys. But Oscar didn't want to send him over there. So Munguia versus Golovkin, that's a nice little fight.
Oh, I'd love to see that. But again, I think it's going to go with who brings the bigger purse, and which rightfully so for Gennady Golovkin. At 40, hey, I'm going to go who has the bigger draw, which would be Jaime Munguia. I don't know. Some argue would say Charlo. I would say Jaime Munguia is another Mexicano. We'll see. I mean, I'm not going to say I wouldn't pay to watch him again, but Me personally, as a fan, I'd like to see the guy just hang him up.
I do agree with that. If I had to choose for him, hang him up, bro. You don't need to be getting hit out here no more. You done. You made a lot of fucking money, bro.
D-Style, what's next for either one of these guys, man? What do you see happening?
I want to see Munguia versus Golovkin. I think that's a fight of the year candidate. That's if Golovkin wants to keep fighting. I'm not that impressed with Munguia, but that's okay. I never seen Munguia as a future pound for pound dude. I never seen Munguia as a guy that's going to be the next Canelo or some. Munguia is an action fighter. And you put somebody like him in front of Gennady Golovkin, especially at this age, that's what's going to make the fight. If this is a prime Golovkin, I'm not even thinking Munguia has a shot, to be honest with you. But the fact that this is a Golovkin that I saw him get hit to the body by man, I forgot his name, the Japanese dude from Japan. Murata, sorry. So, like, I saw him get hit to the body pretty consistently there. That's what Munguia is going to be doing early. I think Munguia has a better engine than Murata, so I think that'll make for a very interesting fight. If he wants to retire, go ahead and retire. I mean, I don't think he has anything to be ashamed for, despite what Fight Doctor says. Fight Doctor says he never fought a Hearns. Newsflash, there is no Hearns. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah, like, where the fuck they got? Where the fuck was Hearns?
I love Fight Doctor, but he's like the most nostalgic guy ever, man. He wants to like bring these guys back from the 50s and throw them in the ring now, man. It's shit's not gonna happen, brother.
Right. But what I will say is, for Canelo, I would laugh if this dude just retired. You know what I mean? And then what? All this attraction. What are you going to say? Because I get your point, Beeb, about like, oh, he's got a big name, but then what? All the big events are gone. All this shit's gone, and you don't got big events like this no more.
I don't want him to go.
So I know you don't, but there's people that act like they do, right? So now he's not going to retire, but what he does have, and I like it, is a chip on his shoulder. He's getting annoyed. He's getting pissed off. And I like this because when Canelo gets pissed off and annoyed, we may not like what he says initially, but he eventually ends up giving us the fights, right? That he got annoyed with the whole Lara thing. Guess what? He fought Lara, right? So I like the chip on the shoulder, and I think that's going to motivate him. I think he's going to come back with a vengeance next year. And despite what anybody thinks, I do think he'll fight Benavidez, and I think that's what he's annoyed about. He's not annoyed at the fact that people are saying, hey, fight Benavidez. He's annoyed at the thought that people think he's avoiding this dude or ducking him when there's absolutely no evidence that he's done such a thing. And I'm a big Benavidez fan.
I'm like, yo, dog, look at everything this dude has done, and he used to campaign as a fucking welterweight, and y'all think that he got something to prove? That's fucking crazy.
That's the thing. That's what's pissing him off. And if you hear him, there's one thing I don't like. I don't like the fact that he's pleading to the media. I don't like that. I want him to demand respect. I don't want him to plead. I don't want to hear, come on, guys, give me my respect, please. I don't want to hear that. Like, maybe that's his demeanor. Maybe that's just the way he is. But I want to see it. I want him to look at the media and say, acknowledge me. Okay, you're gonna acknowledge me. All those AdSense you're making, videotaping this shit, talking about me. All right, you will acknowledge Saul Canelo Alvarez. That's the attitude I want him to have, right? And I want him to just say, "You really think I'm ducking this dude? I don't duck anybody." And the point he's making about David Benavidez, it's not. Look, I'm not expecting David Benavidez or anybody to have the resume of Canelo. I'm not expecting that, but I am expecting him to fight the second best option at least, or the third best option at least. I'm expecting him to at least fight Caleb Plant. For God's sakes, Caleb Plant and David Benavidez have been beefing and threatening each other like this. I'm going to put him in the hospital. Oh, he's a coke addict. He's this and he's that. They've been talking all this shit, and before Canelo was even around, they didn't fight.
Yeah.
You're not going to fight? I did a little exercise on Calix's channel, and I told everybody, put on a piece of paper 1 through 10, and tell me from option 1 to 10, who do you want to see David Benavidez fight? Everybody agrees 1 is Canelo, right? Everybody agrees with that. And then Caleb Plant's number 2, and then everybody has a number 3, or number 4, number 5. And then I asked the question, David Benavidez going to fight anybody? Like, Canelo's not going to fight him next. Let's just say that's true. So you cross out Canelo. But is he going to fight anybody from 2 to 10?
Carlos, listen, this is the thing. And I get sick of this. They act like if it's not Canelo, there's nobody out there. Benavidez versus Carlos Gongora is a great fucking fight. Benavidez versus Anthony Sims is a great fucking fight. Benavidez, not to say that Lerone Richards would want it, but I would watch that. Benavidez versus Lerone Richards, who just schooled Gongora. There are fights out there. Y'all don't want to make them because you preserving that O so that you could one day get Canelo. And that's why I don't sympathize with Benavidez.
And I don't like it because guess what? Trinidad didn't just wait around for De La Hoya. He was fighting dudes too. He said, okay, you beat Whitaker. Some people don't even think you beat him. How about I show you how to beat Whitaker? Okay, that was the attitude guys used to have. Okay, they used to fight the dudes around them. And they're not doing that anymore. And I think it's bullshit. Fighters are waiting around way too long. All right. Just sitting around, just hoping. And I'm telling you, do the exercise, do a 1 through 10. He ain't gonna fight anybody in that top 10. And all I keep hearing the following. Well, do style. Well, I just want to see the Canelo fight. Well, I guess
no, que no tiene tiempo para un Góngora, pero tiene tiempo para Lemieux. You have time for David Lemieux.
Lemieux. Those are my thoughts.
I like the idea of David Benavidez and Canelo, but this is my problem with that fight happening right now. And I've said this many times. Even when Canelo fought like Plant or Saunders or any of these guys, the thing with Plant, let's go with Plant, right? I didn't know, we didn't know too much about Plant. Like he'd never been tested. So you can argue
questions.
You can argue, if Plant had the title, all this, but we live in an era now where everybody has a title. Contender does not exist in any boxing vocabulary anymore. It's just not there anymore, And Benavidez, as good as Benavidez looks, the eye test is definitely has passed, but in reality, I don't really know how good he is because he hasn't fought anybody. And I like Benavidez, So if Benavidez and Canelo takes that fight right now, which I agree with them, what has he done? If Canelo beats him, that's exactly what people are going to use against Canelo on the win if Canelo gets over on Benavidez. It's going to be like, well, he beat another guy that had nobody on his resume. So I agree with a lot of fans where they say, hey, these guys got to fight each other. What's the holdup? Well, the holdup is one, money. Okay, all these guys want to make the biggest purse. So that's fucked us up in our sport. And the second one is everybody gets a title. If we just took ourselves back and said, hey, let's forget the titles and make everybody fight everybody, like Dista said about Trinidad. I mean, Bernard Hopkins, William Joppi, all the guys, they had to be in a tournament to fight the best. To finally just, get the marbles out of the way, they all got into one tournament. We kind of need that back in boxing. Like, we really need that. You know what I mean? We don't even see pay-per-views anymore. Like, you would see the main fighter and the future opponent both on the same card, trying to outdo each other. We don't see that no more.
Exactamente. That's facts. That's how they used to stack the undercards. The guy he gonna fight is on the undercard, so you get to look at him before they set it up.
Yeah. Lee, what do you think is going to be next for Golovkin and Canelo? Do you think Golovkin should step away?
As far as Golovkin, I would rather see him retire. What does he still have to prove? I mean, look at his resume. He was a silver medalist in the 2004 Olympics. He had an amateur record of 345-5. He had 16 successful title defenses of a widely recognized middleweight belt. And if you include his secondary defenses, that's 21. I think he should be a shoe-in Hall of Famer. I mean, I find it really strange that there is actually a debate as to whether Triple G is a Hall of Famer. Because to me, a Hall of Famer is a guy who shows long-term dominance over his peers. And I think that 23 consecutive knockouts, and I think that 16 title defenses, which is only second behind Bernard Hopkins' 20, that's long-term dominance. You can quibble as to his opponents, and it is perceived that the Triple G that fought Canelo the first time, and many people thought Triple G should have won that fight. He wasn't even in his prime at that point, and he still beat Canelo in many people's eyes. So I don't think there's any debate as to whether he is a Hall of Famer or not. I think why it's doubted is because it's been so long since we've seen the prime Triple G. It's been years. and he was the number one pound for pound fighter in the world at the time that he fought Canelo the first time. And he had been that for almost a year. But if he does choose to fight on, he does have several options. And I remember reading a story earlier this week that the WBA has ordered him to defend their belt against secondary champion Arislandi Lara. And as part of the deal in which the WBA gave its blessing for Golovkin to fight Canelo, he had to let the WBA know right after the fight whether he'd go back down to 160 and fight Lara. And he has until mid-January to make that decision. Frankly, I don't expect that fight to happen because, one, that's a fight that Triple G could lose, and two, Lara doesn't bring, as good a fighter as Arislandi Lara is, he doesn't bring a lot of money to the table. I don't think that he brings enough money to justify the risk that he presents. So I would say he might just vacate the WBA title and keep the IBF that he originally won the second time around. Now, it was mentioned that the IBF's number one contender is Esquivia Falcao. I think that that's a fight that he could win. It doesn't bring a whole lot of money, but it's a fight that he can win, unlike Lara. So if he wants to continue and if he wants to continue and win his next fight, I think that's the fight that he could take. Other intriguing choices, I think, are unification fights against Jamal Charlo, WBC, and Ali Manala, who is the countryman and the WBO champ. Neither of those guys have a fight scheduled, but neither fighter is aligned to either to DAZN or Eddie Hearn. Ali Manala is promoted by Top Rank. Al Heyman is associated with Charlo, and Charlo hasn't fought in 15 months, and he doesn't have a fight scheduled. And I guess he had a back injury. He was supposed to fight Selecki, and that didn't come through. So Charlo's looking for a fight. Triple G is looking for a fight. Why not make that one? And Triple G does have to make a decision on the WBA title. I think he's going to drop it. He'll fight Falcao, and then hopefully he'll go with the unification fights. I would like to see both of those, that Charlo and Ali Manala fight. And I think that if Ali Manala does fight his countryman, if it's signed and if the money is there, he's going to forget the fact that he worships Triple G. He has a job to do. He has a fighter in front of him. And I think he's going to knock Triple G out.
I mean, I think he can beat Lara, though. If you want, I kind of disagree a little. I think that both Lara and Esquiva are beatable. Esquiva, I think, is actually a little bit more difficult because he's a combination puncher, and that's what Sergey was. And we saw Sergey give him hell because he's not throwing 1 or 2 shots at a time. He's putting 3 and 4 punches together. Esquiva is also a southpaw, an Olympian. I think today's Lara, he's ready to be put away. Even a prime Lara used to get knocked down. Yeah. His legs are gone. Like if you've been watching him, his legs are gone. So the threat that he used to pose, it's not there anymore. He's a little bit more mobile. I think Triple G, even today's Triple G, I think he can get him. But Esquiva Falcao, that looks a little harder to me because that guy throws punches in bunches.
Yeah. Lukey, where do you see Canelo going? And do you think Triple G should keep going on, or do you think he should retire?
For Triple G, I want to see a world tour, kind of like that Shooter Gang Coney, the Mozzie chains on a world tour. They took it from the kid, and it's going country to country. Let's have him fight Zarafa in Australia. Let's have him do a Kazakhstan fight. Let's have him do a Mexico fight. Obviously, it's not going to be the top-tier opponents, but let's let people in these countries see Golovkin come to their country in an older version. If he wants to continue, I think a world tour, he's of that stature to be able to travel the world and do some one-off fights. I agree with the idea. I'd like Canelo to come back at the earliest next September. Let's have him come back later, because I think that another thing we're not thinking about is he just fought like 4 or 5 times very quickly. And when guys are fighting that often, you're going to have a bad night. You're going to have wear and tear. We saw it with Bam Rodriguez in his last fight. He's fighting killers back to back, very little break. It's like, let Bam wait until January to come back. Canelo looks to me not as a finished fighter, but a tired fighter. He needs to go back, rest, rejuvenate, and then I think he will be more motivated. I think some of his statements are just a fighter that's fighting a lot and is very frustrated, burnt out, and tired. And I think he needs just some time away.
Yeah. I want to give Canelo the benefit of the doubt. I think he's had a tough schedule. I think there's been some wear and tear in his body. He had the knee injury, had the wrist injury. I did look tired. So, yeah, I think he needs to recharge the battery, take some time off. For Golovkin, there's just so much money on the table. I said this on Sunday, and I think, Ring, you also mentioned this in one of your videos, that you wouldn't be surprised if you saw him maybe sign a 2 or 3 fight deal with the PBC, because there's just so much money on the table. They could have that unification fight with Charlo. And again, I think Lara is it is a fight that Triple G could lose. But again, Lara is faded as well. He's up there in age too. His legs aren't what they used to be.
Jarrett Hurd beat Lara, Beeb. If Jarrett Hurd can beat Lara, Golovkin can beat Lara.
Well, and Angulo gave Lara a very hard fight in roughly his prime. Lara's had Lara's not exactly like Tony Harrison, but he has the same issue as Tony Harrison, where he has mental lapses in the midst of fighting very good fights. So he'll be fighting a perfect fight, and then he'll get himself trapped on the ropes or do something, and then have a big blunder. And it's like this diminished version of Lara, we don't know how big his error margin is. He used to have a margin of error. Now it's becoming much smaller. And I think that him and Golovkin would be a fun old guy fight.
Yeah, I love old guy fights and shit. I love shit fights like Lucas Brown and Junior Fight. That was a shit fight. Who the fuck looked at that fucking Lucas Brown?
I just don't know. Like, I don't know if I want to watch two guys that when you put their combined age together, they're as old as Joe Habib. I don't know if I want to watch that.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I've always said this, because a lot of times when people will look at two fighters, oh, this guy's past it, and this guy's past it. Why do you want to see them fight? But they're on the same level. Whenever you put two guys who are on that same level, they make for a good fight. Lara's leg, Dave said it, Lara's legs aren't what they used to be. So he's more stationary. You said it as well too, Ring. So this is not going to be the Lara that fought Canelo. This is going to be a Lara that's going to have to stand his ground.
And look at who Lara's fighting: Cornflake LaManna, Greg Vendetti. They take him out of the cryo chamber once a year, get him some him and that guy to fight. He knocks a guy out. He goes back into cryo sleep. Like it's not like he's a world beater.
Right. Here's another thing is that people forget if we went off what everybody's saying, like, oh, these guys, we don't want to see these guys fight. We don't want that. They're old. They're over the hill. We would never have gone like Arturo Gatti versus Ward. We would never gotten Barrera versus Morales 1. That's why, just like what you said, Beeb, you watch all the fights, you buy them, because we kind of hope. We knew with Canelo and Triple G, we knew that Triple G wasn't the same guy, and we expected what we saw. But we were hoping to get a glimpse of the first and second fight. That's what we were hoping for, and that's why we tuned in. We were hoping that third trilogy fight was going to be memorable. We didn't know how much was left. We didn't know if he was going to go for broke or what. If the hate was really going to take over, were they going to be emotional in this fight and just say, fuck boxing, fuck being strategic, fuck trying to, set the other guy, just let our hands go. We didn't know that, and that's why we tune in.
Yeah, and I was going to mention, as far as Canelo goes, and we've talked about this off the record beat, but if he's going to be active, he needs to take an easy, whether people want to hear this or not, he needs to take an easy fight in between.
He needs to stay busy fights. He needs to
stay busy fight. Those Yildirim fights, everybody talks about the old days, like Fight Doctor reminiscences about the 650s. Well, guess what? They didn't fight like the killers back to back to back. Like, they were active, but they would fight dudes with 500 records in between. You know what I mean? So, what I would like to see Canelo do, if he comes back earlier than expected, do a fight in Estadio Azteca. Don't go to UK to fight, right? Or bring him to Estadio Azteca to do a fight in front of your people. It will be a big event. You know what I mean? I think that if that's what he should do, get a stay busy fight in Mexico, Estadio Azteca, or something like that. I think your people deserve it. That's number one. You keep talking about you represent Mexico, and we're going to talk about that later, but go represent Mexico. Like do a big event. Chavez used to do that. Chavez used to go to Mexico in between his big fights. He was a very active fighter. Guess what? He would go to Mexico. He would fight. He would come back here. He would fight a Mal Dictator, go back to Mexico, fight somebody else.
Yeah, fight a fucking Ramon. Like that's what people don't remember about the Chavez era. Like, yes, he was active, but there was Ramon Aramburus in there, guys with 0-1 records. They're not all going to be killers. This is not a
oh, but he fought Yildirim. Really, you wanted him to fight David Benavidez in between Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders? Are you crazy?
That's what I'm saying.
The only
Like
reason
each
he
hard
fought-
fight is a car accident. Like you're literally getting a car accident, and people are like, "Oh, sometimes you got to take your car to the mechanic to get it changed. You got to get an oil change, right? You can't just go run it into a wall. Okay, just leave it out there and then run it into a no. You got to get the change up, so then you can have another car accident. It's just
rotate the tires for the next fucking accident, man. Shit.
The only reason why he fought Yildirim was because he was ordered to fight him, or else he would be stripped of the title. And at the time, Canelo's quest was to become undisputed, so it was a fight that he had to get out of the way. As far as fighting a stay busy fight, that would be great, but in this era, the top fighters only fight twice a year, and I don't think that Canelo's going to break from that. He basically said one of the reasons why he was injured, he had that injury to his wrist, was that. Of that schedule, that 4 fights in 11-month schedule, and I think that may have taught him a lesson that maybe I should go back to the twice a year schedule. So, but as far I didn't get to who I thought that Canelo should fight next, and for me as a fan, it's David Benavidez first because he's the interim WBC titleist, and if Canelo wants to keep that belt, and I think he does. It's the green belt, and it's the belt in Mexico. He's going to have to fight Benavidez. And also, if he doesn't fight Benavidez, he's going to lose face with the Mexican people because they're going to think he's ducking him. But really, Benavidez is the biggest threat that Canelo has at 168 because he's got youth, he's got height, he's got reach, he's got work rate, he's got power, and even more importantly, marketability. He's got charisma. He is fluent in English and Spanish, and he can hold up his end of a promotion if they decide to do a tour. If Canelo decides to return either in May or in September, they're talking that he may be out for an entire year. I think that Benavidez is attractive enough in terms of his style and his temperament to be a real draw. I do think the root of his hesitancy is that deep down, he knows that another loss is going to affect how his career is going to be perceived by fans, writers, and historians. And at age 32, I think we've already seen the best of Canelo Alvarez. And I think we're already starting to see the first signs of decline.
I think I want to say that I like the Benavidez fight. I don't know that the WBC will squeeze him. They learned their lesson in 2016 when he chucked the belt. They're going to play nice because they want those sanctioning fees. That's kind of how I feel. They want to play nice. I don't actually think he's hesitant about what D-Style said pretty much encapsulated what I think. Fam, how y'all coming at me over him when he ain't do shit? And y'all coming at me over him? I'm out here fighting light heavyweights and Golovkins and unifying divisions in 11 months that he was already in before I even moved up. And y'all coming at me over him? Nah, I think he's frustrated. I honestly see that dude is mad and he's sick of putting up with it. He's like, yo, come on, y'all. Like, y'all wilding. Y'all talking crazy to me over a dude that got sat on his back pocket by Ronald Gavril. Come on. I ain't never even been dropped. And I done campaigned at 4 weights. He campaigned at 1. And he got sat on his back pocket. And y'all coming at me over him. That's crazy.
Yeah. I think the WBC will take their time in mandating that. They usually slow roll their mandatories, especially for guys like Mayweather, Canelo, Deontay Wilder. Like Deontay Wilder, what did he fight? Like 1 mandatory in like 2.5 years? Yeah. So yeah, they'll slow roll that. And plus the whole PBC and DAZN type situation, that's going to be a problem as well. I just think that it's a tough situation who this next opponent's going to be for Canelo. Will it be the Bivol Ramirez winner? And if it's not the Bivol Ramirez winner, I don't think it can be Benavidez because Samson Lukowitz said that he would never let David Benavidez fight on DAZN. It would have to be on PBC. I asked him the question. I don't know how firm he is on that. I mean, money does talk. And we did, when Canelo had a fight planned, he had to go over to Fox. So that fight, I don't think is going to happen in the near distant future. I think the only way that fight happens is if Canelo finishes these 3 fights with his own, and then he's freed up again, and then he'll probably go over to BBC to fight Benavidez. So that's how I see that thing happening. So it is what it is. But let's talk about this whole Canelo statement that seems to be following him around, and people just won't let go of. It was at the post-fight press conference, he was asked this question several times about why won't you fight Mexican fighters? Will you fight David Benavidez? He's Mexican. Will you fight Gilberto Ramirez? And he kind of tried to explain it a little bit more in depth by saying, well, I never said I wouldn't. I said it's not something that I want to do. But a lot of people are holding him to that. I don't want to, and he's getting a lot of heat for it. So we'll start with you, D-Style. What do you think about this whole situation? Do you think that he won't ever fight a Mexican fighter for the rest of his career? Or do you think this is something he said that he preferred not to?
Right. I think people got to put everything in context. All this started last year when he was asked about Munguia, and he said 2 things, right? He said, I really don't want to fight Mexican fighters because I represent Mexico. But he did say, but Munguia hasn't reached that level yet, and I'm not going to close the door to it. That's what he said, right? And then he was asked about Zurdo. And again, he said, look, I'm supporting Zurdo in the fight against Bivol. I think he has a good chance to win. I really don't want to fight Mexican fighters because I represent Mexico, right? So that was always his message. I always felt, and I'm not even saying I like what he's saying, but I always felt, and he confirmed this at the press conference, that it was his way of showing being patriotic over his country and showing support over the Mexican fighters that represent his country, right? In this case, he's very open and saying he's rooting for Zurdo to win, and he's saying he believes Zurdo has a good chance to win. Whether he believes it or not, I don't know. I'm not in Canelo's head, right? But when he says, I really don't want to fight Mexican fighters, he's not saying I'm not going to fight Mexican fighters. Because he said at the press conference, he said, but I don't care. I'll fight anybody, right? And he has already fought Mexican fighters. He fought Chavez Jr., he fought Angulo, right? I mean, he was beating the shit out of Angulo. It didn't look to me like he didn't want to hurt a Mexican in that fight, okay? And most of the guys he's fought have been Mexican. So it's not like he hasn't fought Mexicans, right? Now, granted, do I believe this had ever had anything to do with David Benavidez? No, I don't. Okay. I don't think that ever had, I don't think he thought about it. He never was asked about David Benavidez and said, I don't want to fight Mexican. He never said that. He said it about Munguia and he said it about Zurdo specifically. All right. Now, if you want to count David Benavidez in the mix, that's 3 Mexican fighters at 160, 168, and 175. These divisions do not have a sea of Mexican fighters. They just don't. You have a lot of European fighters, okay, for the most part in these divisions. Okay, most Mexican fighters are from 147 sub. Okay, that's the truth. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm looking at it and saying, oh, like Canelo doesn't want to, like, I don't like that he said it, but I understand where he's coming from. It's his way of trying to be patriotic. That's all it is. Okay, and it's his way of saying, hey, I represent Mexico. I don't want to beat up a Mexican when we're in this shit together, type of shit. You know what I mean?
No, pero también esto, Johnny Beck dijo la misma vaina.
I did.
Same fucking thing. And nobody batted an eyelash. And he said the same thing. We have fighters that are saying, I'm not going to fight him because he's my friend. Neither of the Charlo brothers didn't want to fight Lara because they had the same sparring partner.
There you go.
This is going on. But like Beep said before, when Jeff Bezos do something, it's extra goody. When in reality, Joe Blow is doing that. Motherfuckers just not saying
but I don't want to distract. Like, I stand firm that I don't like that he said it. I just want to make sure I make that clear. But I don't like it when any fighter says it, though. That's where I'm consistent. But do I ultimately believe that he doesn't want, like, he's using this to duck Benavidez the way Fight Hype insinuated? Oh, bad news for David Benavidez. And then he's asked at the press conference, oh, but he's got Colombian blood and he is from the United States. And Of course he got annoyed, right? And the annoyance was, look, dude, like you really think I'm ducking this dude? Like that's basically what he said. You really believe, like you look at my resume, you really believe I don't want to fight this guy? Like I've been avoiding him? Here's the reality, and I'll end it with this. The reality is that if you look at the timeline, he's never even had the opportunity to duck David Benavidez, okay? David Benavidez was the champion at the weight class before Canelo moved up to that weight class, okay? Canelo fought, Kovalev, then he went back down to fight Jacobs. He lost the belt at the scales, okay? I did an interview on my channel with him, and he himself said, you know what? I need to earn my way back up. I missed weight. That's my bad. I need to earn my way back up. Okay, that's what he's been in the process of doing. So when exactly was Canelo, like, when did he duck him? You know what I mean? And here's the other lie. The lie that's being told out here is you have boxing fans that want to speak for all boxing fans. I can't speak for Lee Groves. I can't speak for Ring IQ. I can't speak for Joe Habib, Lukey, or 97 Ruff. I can't speak for them. They all have their own opinions, okay? And what I mean by that is this. When you have fans that or content creators out here that sound like politicians, just like when politicians say, oh, the American people want this and the American people want that. That's how you motherfuckers sound when you say, oh, all the boxing fans want the David Benavidez fight. That's not true, because even when David Benavidez' father posted, oh, this is a fight everybody wants, I'm looking at the comments and I'm seeing, no, I don't want that fight. I want the Charlo fight.
Because if he said, yo, Andre, come here, let me beat the shit out of you, I'm okay with that.
Well, hey, yeah, but what I'm saying, here's what I'm saying. There's people that want the Andrade fight as their that's the one they want. There's people that want the Charlo fight. No, I don't want him to fight a flat-footed Benavidez. I want him to fight Charlo. Okay, because he's more athletic and better and more powerful. I wanted to fight him, right? I wanted to fight a rematch with Bivol. That's what he should do. He should run it back, or he's a coward if he doesn't do it, right? Everybody wants different things, okay? No matter if he fights Benavidez, it might make me happy and Lee Groves happy, but it might not make everybody happy. Everybody wants something different.
Well, I got a guy who comments on every video on my fucking channel about fucking Demetrius Andre, bro. I want him to fight Andre just so the fucking guy go away. He fucking fought him and he beat him. Now leave me the fuck alone about this.
I have a Dos on that.
Dave, how did you interpret those comments when you heard them from Canelo Alvarez? What's your take on them?
Who, me? Me?
Yes, Dave, yeah.
Honestly, I didn't really put a whole lot of thought into it, to tell you the truth. I mean, fighters talk, promoters talk, and we know it's just whistles in the wind. It's one day it's this, the next day it's that. So I really don't get caught up with any of that. I'm more of that old school fight fan. I'll be there when the fight happens and they get in the ring, and then I want to talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. Shout out to Amok PPV. Say $2 super chat, says Beeb and Ring IQ making a collab. Okay.
There you go.
All right. Ring, you have a lot to say about this. Go ahead and finish.
D-Style said it better than I could. Every other fucking Canelo video that I make, they want something new. No, we need to fight Bivol. No, we need to fight Charlo. No, we need to fight Andre. No, we need to fight. It's like, fam, at the end of the day, and I've been saying this for 2 years now, all them motherfuckers is interchangeable. I'm going to pay for the fight regardless. If it's Charlo, I'm going to pay for the fight. If it's Andre, I'm going to pay for the fight. If it's Bivol, Benavidez, whoever, I'm going to pay for the fight. But stop pretending that one of these guys is more special than the other. No, the fuck they ain't. The one guy I said, Canelo, don't fight him. He fucking fought him. And that was fucking Bivol. I said, don't fucking fight him. It's not going to be good. He fucking fought the goddamn guy. I said, fight Charlo. He ain't shit. Fight him. No, he fucking fights Bivol. So whatever he want to do now, I'm cool with it. Because I, unlike a lot of people, knew Bivol is bad for business. Got a pesky style. He's very durable, very cerebral fighter, very economic, defensively responsible. All the things that don't do you no favors in a goddamn light heavyweight. If he decides, yo, you know what? Fuck these belts. I want to go beat the shit out of Demetrius Andre. Hey, I'm cool with that shit. Because it's all of them got a story. Charlo has a story. Andre has a story. Benavidez has I'm cool with all that shit. I don't care. Personally, I don't care. As far as his comments, like I said, he's not the only one saying that. In fact, a lot of fighters made the decision that they are not going to fight certain fighters of a certain denomination. And that's what you see when Charlo doesn't fight Andre. That's what you see when Yanni Beck says, no, I don't want to fight Gennady-Golovkin. So I'm not going to hold him to a different standard than them. I didn't lose my mind. I'm not going to lose my mind. It's okay. He has a better resume than Yah anyway. Doesn't even matter.
Like, you don't want to fight Mexicans, but you PBC dudes don't want to fight each other. So this is the first era, by the way, where the in-house guys aren't fighting each other.
Exactly.
Yeah. Lukey, what are your thoughts on these comments, man?
I mean, it's like I'm at a point where I just want to see world-ranked fighters fight the best fighters in the world. So if you're in the top 10 of the pound for pound, I'm not picky. I just want it to be a logical world-ranked fighter that all of us panelists say that's a good fight. That's someone who is a respected veteran, because that's all I can ask for anymore. So I can't just sit here and judge Canelo's statement, because we're in the era of putting caveats on everything. This fighter will put a caveat on that. Canelo will put a caveat on this. I've given up trying to live with every boxer's social network and understanding of their framework and fabric. As a fan, I just want to see people that chase legacy. So I just want to see a fighter, if it's Canelo, when you return, please fight someone that's a well-ranked opponent. And he's been giving us that. And I asked that of all the top fighters. So if it's not going to be Mexican fighters, it's disappointing, because I think David Benavidez is an interesting opponent. I think Zordo is an interesting opponent. But at the same time, there's a lot of these great fights that are not happening in this era. And I'm so numb to that it's not going to be earth-shattering if fights don't happen, because we don't even know if we're going to get Crawford Spence. And that's like a no-brainer. I said this the other day. That fight feels like Chad Dawson versus Andre Ward, except Chad Dawson and Andre Ward made the fight before people could argue about the fight. But that's kind of like, it creates the superstar of the division, but it's just going on and on. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
Shout out to D-Style Boxing with the follow. Super Chat says Ring IQ is undercover Mexican. Hello. Well,
my sister's a Mexican. I, however, am not. They're half Mexican. They are. But I mean, it's just, look, man, if you like boxing, and this is for the earth, if you like boxing, you have to like Mexicans by default. There's no two ways about it. How could you like boxing and not like Mexican fighters? That makes no fucking sense. You like boxing, but you don't like so you don't like Chavez, you don't like Morales, you don't like Barrera, you don't like Finito Lopez, you don't what?
But IQ, doesn't that go for every type of boxer? Like, if you like boxing, you should just like a great fighter. Like
I like all the fighters.
No, but like honest. I mean, like I never really understand when someone's like, oh, I don't like a Mexican fighter, because there is a Mexican fighter that's great. Like, you should like greatness. It shouldn't be an ethnicity that draws you in to what you like. It should be the craft, the skill, and the practitioner itself.
Listen, Lukey. I like a stray cat with a good jab, bro. If it's fighting, I'll watch it. So it ain't even the flags to me. It's that people are playing a very toxic game with each other on this little thing called YouTube, where they're turning everything into a tribalist issue. I ain't Puerto Rican. I ain't Mexican. I ain't Caucasian either. I hate to break the news to you, but I'm not Caucasian either. All right? I'm not a lot of that shit. And I like a lot of they fighters. I like Japanese fighters. I like Mexican fighters. I like Puerto Rocks. I like Xander Zayas. I like them Asians over there, Gento Nakatani and motherfucking Naoya Inoue. I don't play that dumbass game. But when I see somebody say or act like you got something against Mexican fighters, I don't know what boxing planet or fan you are that you don't like Mexican fighters. How could you like boxing and not like Mexican fighters?
But IQ, I think the promoters and to a certain extent the networks have taught fans to kind of argue amongst each other, because we haven't gotten the fights ourselves. So now as fans, we've learned how to argue amongst each other because the fights aren't getting made. So I kind of blame the system itself for these arguments, because it almost feels like we've been trained to hate each other rather than uplift the sport.
I mean, that started way back. I mean, if you remember, Mexico versus the Philippines, Mexico versus Puerto Rico, UK versus America. It's been like that for
always been tribal.
Yeah,
but
you know the thing was, there wasn't hate. Like, look, que cuando Chávez iba a pelear Camacho, when I was a kid, I was a Chavez fan. I didn't hate all fucking, I didn't hate Puerto Ricans because I was a Chavez fan. Like, no, I like the Mexican guy. I think he's gonna win this shit. motherfucking right now, an underrated rivalry that doesn't get talked about. Mexico versus Argentina. Great fucking rivalry with the girls, with the guys. It's a great rivalry. That don't mean I hate fucking Argentina. I love Argentinians. I just know when I see them, I know I'm gonna get a good ass fight. So it don't.
Right.
But
what I'm saying is that, see, we're fight fans. See, we love the sport. We're in love with the fighters. We don't love the fighters. We love the fight in the sport, right? I think, but promoters have tapped into that tribal mentality. They've understand this tribal mentality, and that's why you see a lot of fans that, you know, they're going to root for their guy and not even. I mean, look, I covered media for years, right? I remember going to Andre Ward fight, and the guy next to me, didn't even know who Bika was. He was like, "Who's this guy? Who's this guy Bika that Ward's going to fight?" You know, I've been in numerous fights like that. You know, it's just part of our sport, unfortunately.
You said, look, I saw a guy, right? There's bad predictions that can be made. But one of the worst predictions I've seen in recent memory, based on tribalism, was Marcus Brown versus Artur Beterbiev. Some fucking guy. Hey, the fucking guy. I'm like, did you see a Kalajdzic fight? Did you see what happened in the Pascal fight? You're picking Brown. Hey, fuck it, right? Fuck it. You need to throw shit at a wall. It might stink. But so I get it. But I let people live, bro. I'm like, look, pick who you pick for whatever reason you pick them. It's cool, bro. I'm just saying that I don't look at fights that way. I really like to look at like the skills. I don't want to sound like a cookie cutter comment, but I really do look at the boxer. You know, and if they happen to be from somewhere, hey, that's cool too. That's cool, man.
Let Lee jump. We'll let Lee jump in. What are your thoughts on these comments, Lee?
Well, first of all, put yourself in Canelo's place. You just fought 12 rounds with Gennady Golovkin. You finished off a trilogy. You're tired. You're in pain. And the first thing that you're asked is, are you going to fight David Benavidez next? You know, enjoy the victory. Let him enjoy the victory for a couple of minutes, you know? So I understand why he's a little bit perturbed by the question, and also his comments about not fighting Mexicans. That D-Style did a really good job of tracing the entomology of. As far as ducking guys, look, you know, Canelo has fought 19 championship level fighters. He fought Callum Smith when he didn't have to fight Callum Smith. He wanted to become undisputed at 168, and in order to do so, he had to fight a 6'3" jab monster with a really good right hand in Callum Smith, and he had to fight a trickster in Billy Joe Saunders, and he had to fight Caleb Plant, who is a tall, long boxer who can move. Not really great, agreeable styles, but he fought all of them, and he beat all of them, and he knocked 2 of them out. And so that speaks well for him. You know, Charlo fans and Andrade fans could make a case that the Canelo avoided them. Mauricio Suleiman made it easy for Canelo to sidestep him by creating the franchise title. Because at the time, Canelo was the WBC middleweight champion and Charlo was his -- 1 contender. They were on a collision course. And Mauricio Suleiman wanted to not strip his Canelo of the title, but he also wanted to take care of Charlo being the mandatory. So he created the franchise title, which is described as a ceremonial title that allows its holder to circumvent WBC rules and go for unification fights or fight out of the weight class or whatever. And then the full WBC champion underneath, he inherits the responsibilities of fighting mandatory challengers and other challengers ordered by the WBC. So by Mauricio doing what he did, he split the baby and he got what he wanted. Canelo's still a champion. He still can charge sanctioning fees, and Charlo was taken care of as far as becoming a world champion at 160 pounds. But as far as Andrade was concerned, yes, he was the WBO counterpart, while Canelo was a 160-pound champion. Andrade confronted Canelo, and Canelo had that famous expletive response in English that went rather viral. But I don't fault Canelo for he doesn't have a history of ducking guys. He just doesn't really. He takes on challenges and he wins. Bivol, he didn't have to fight Bivol. I thought before the fight that Bivol was going to be a really tough style matchup. Tall, long, great jab, ring generalship, discipline. He doesn't care whether he stinks out the joint or not, as long as he wins rounds, and that's
Durable
exactly what
too.
happened.
Durable
And
too. He took a right hand from Joe Smith, didn't go down. Durable.
Very, very good defensive fighter as well, because what Canelo was doing statistically that was very good during this stretch was he was very accurate with his power shots, but he also he was accurate with his power shots, and he limited his opponents as far as their power shots. But he got away with very low work rate. The accuracy made up for it, and the power made up for it. Bivol, with his great defense, took away the accuracy, and all that was left was the low work rate. And that's why he lost rounds, and that's why he lost definitively on the scorecards of most people. The judges, that's another story. But as far as what we all saw, Bivol won the fight comprehensively. I think that the comments, it's really just comments. The proof is in the pudding. What does Canelo do next? What does he do? People can say what they want to say, but actions speak louder than words. And if he comes back a few months later, after he takes care of the injury and everything, does his rehab, hopefully he comes back in time to fight next May. We'll find out who he fights next. I would like to see Benavidez, but he still has that cornucopia of attractive opponents that he could fight next. He's still in a very enviable position. He makes the most money, and he generates the most sanctioning fees and money for the cities that host him and everything like that. Whoever he chooses to fight next, I think it's going to be a challenging guy. And we'll just see how things go from there. But as for now, let him rest, let him recuperate, let his team decide what the next step is going to be. I made my preference pretty clear. But if he chooses to fight somebody else, as long as he is a good quality fighter, I'm not going to quibble too much.
Yeah. Shout out to I said, "Yo, Dave, you can bring the show back." These people live in the past, man.
What happened? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. There was all kinds of noise in the background. What was that?
Oh, he said, "I am Dwayne." This time with the 199 super chat said, "Yo, Dave, you and Gabe gonna bring the show back?" With a question mark.
Oh, no. Gabe is acting. I wish him the best. He's acting. He's doing what he's always wanted to do, and I'm doing what I've always wanted to do. So no, I'm just doing stuff here and there, man. Like D-Star asked me to be on. I was happy to come back on. I've been on G-Funk show, happy to be on there. And then I do things here and there, once in a while and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think me and him we're in a stage of our lives right now. We're okay where we're at. You know what I mean? So sorry, man. No, the show's not coming back.
I just want to say one thing about tribalism. I don't think tribalism is necessarily bad. I just don't think it has to be malicious. It has to be hostile. It doesn't have to be insulting. It's okay to, be patriotic and, be proud of your heritage. There's nothing wrong with that, but you don't have to be rude, ignorant, and mean about it. Back in the day, in 2009, I used to do videos, and people would literally insult me just because I picked against someone that they loved, and they would take it personal. You know what I mean? I get all these types of crazy names called at me and stuff like that. And I don't think it has to go to that level. And that's where tribalism, that's when it gets out of hand. And I think in YouTube, I think it's been taken to another level that it really never needed to go to. So again, be proud of your heritage, be proud of who you are, and be proud of where you came from. That's fine. I have no problem with that. No one should have a problem with that, but you don't have to attack anyone that is not like you just because they're
Bro,
not.
it's people that ask you where you from just so they can figure out whether or not they can hate you or not.
Exactly.
Si yo digo algo de Canelo, you're one of those fucking Eastern Euros. If I say something about an Eastern Euro, tú eres uno de esos mexicanos. I'm like, God, bro, look, man, I'm not from your fucking planet, bro. How about that? Now you can't say shit.
And it all comes down to just the way the current climate is in not only America but in the world. Everyone has to be part of a team, and if you're not on their team, then they want to be against you and they want to attack you. So it's just crazy. So let's get to the next topic here: Joyce versus Joseph Parker. This fight kind of just snuck right up on me, man. This is a great fight, actually. I think this is a very intriguing matchup. And I want to go around the panel. I just want to see what you guys think of this matchup, who you think is going to win. And do you think that the winner will actually get a shot at the title? What's funny to me is this is kind of like a mandatory type fight here for the WBO, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a rematch clause both ways here. So I've never seen that when for a mandatory position, there's a rematch clause in it. That doesn't really make sense to me, but I don't know. Lee, what are your thoughts on this, man? How do you see this fight playing out? And do you think it's kind of bizarre that there's a rematch clause in this fight? Oh, you're on mute, brother. Lee, you're on mute, Lee.
Sorry, you muted me. You didn't tell me.
No,
okay. Well, at age 37, Joe Joyce has to be one of the oldest fighters ever to be perceived as an up-and-comer. He's 14-0, 13 knockouts. And in Parker, he's going to be facing the best opponent of his pro career, even better than the 15-0 Daniel Dubois that he stopped in round 10 with a jab to the orbital bone. I mean, heavy hands. Very interesting clash of styles. I perceive Parker to be a skilled all-around guy who has fought the much better quality of opponents. And Joyce's nickname of Juggernaut, I think that perfectly fits him. He's a big, strong, volume puncher. He's got a telephone pole jab. He's got heavy hands. To me, in a way, Joyce reminds me of another older fighter who branded himself as a prospect when he returned to the sport in 1987. And that was Big George Foreman. He was 38 at the time, but at the time he came back, he said, I'm going to treat myself like a young prospect coming back to the sport. And over the next 4 years, from ages 38 to 42, he did just that by going 24-0 with 23 knockouts, going into his first title fight against Evander Holyfield. Mm-hmm. Joyce had the same thick body and that same long, hard, thumping jab that as Big George did. And he does get hit flush with power shots every so often. But so far, Joyce has shown a really stout chin. That's very good. Because neither man is a real defensive wizard, I think we're going to see plenty of bombs thrown and landed. And if that happens, I think Joyce is going to wear him down, and I think he's going to win by a later round TKO.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lukey, how do you see this fight playing out? And what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Well, I was listening to Lee, and I love listening to Lee talk because he's got so much knowledge, and he's one of the best boxing minds. And when I was listening to what you said, not just was that a great statement, if you told the average person who's the younger fighter, Joe Joyce or Joe Parker, most people would think Joe Parker's the 37-year-old fighter. It blows people's mind when I tell them that Joe Parker's 30 years old and Joe Joyce, the perceived prospect, is 37. And it's a mind blower that we are so heavy in this sport looking at age. Joe Joyce is a silver medal Olympia, who I thought it was a no-brainer to have a Tony Yoka heavyweight fight down the road. It looks like that fight will probably never happen based off of Yoka losing to Martin Bacoli. that being said, I think this is one of these interesting fights where Joe Parker, really, his losses aren't terrible, but we as fans kind of perceive him as a guy, because of that Chisora fight where most people thought he lost, as probably his better days are past. Calix Boxing posted a great video on Twitter with Michael J. White and Kimbo Slice. And it was for D Styles, and maybe he can elaborate more when he speaks, but it kind of illustrates why Joe Joyce is so dangerous, that it's not necessarily speed. It's just, he's coming with straight punches and he's coming to time you. And I think people dumb down because he's not a flashy or elegant fighter. There's a lot of things Joe Joyce does technically well, but because I guess it's kind of like the Golovkin rule, people don't want to say Golovkin's a good boxer because he's offensive. And I think a lot of people say boxers have to be on their back foot, or boxers have to be a certain thing to be called a boxer. And Joe Joyce, I think, is a very good boxer, but he's not what people typically call a boxer. He's a guy that comes forward. He's a guy that hits, but he's very good at timing. He's very good at what he does. I think we're all expecting Joe Joyce to win, but I think we're all expecting a fairly good fight.
Gotcha. Ring, what do you think of this matchup? Who are you picking to win?
I love this matchup. Tired of Joseph Parker. I really am. Sick of that guy. I don't think he's got the dog to keep Joe Joyce off him, to be honest. I think fundamentally he does a couple of things better than Joe Joyce fundamentally. He's a little bit more defensively responsible. He's faster in the pocket, very balanced, great chin, great powers of recovery too. But Joe is constant. He's constant. He's going to be on you the whole round. And when you let Derek Chisora walk back to his corner after you dropped him, that you should jump on him and finish him, you literally let the man walk back to his corner and post up waiting to throw a counter shot. You don't got the dog in you for this fight. Like, I lost a lot of faith in Joseph off of that alone. So for me, Joe Joyce wins the fight. He probably stops him late. If he doesn't stop him, he can beat him on activity, because Joseph Parker, he doesn't throw punches in bunches anyway. Joe does, Joe Joyce. So I like Joe Joyce to win in any fashion, really.
Yeah. Dave, how do you see this fight playing out? And you excited about this one?
I'm excited about this one. Joe Joyce, Joseph Parker is, the best name on a name that he's going to be facing on his resume. I wonder what Parker and them went back to look at, because that Dubai fight, I mean, you have to go off of that one, but he fought a prospect, an untested fighter as well, that everybody was kind of memorized with his power. And he was able to walk him down and land the bigger shots. Parker, if I was him, I'd go back when Joe Joyce fought Usyk and saw that angles and not being there to be hit is going to be the key, because Joe Joyce he's slow, super slow. He's consistent, but he has to walk you down, as these guys have mentioned. He has to walk you down. So I think Parker has an edge with experience, and he's also had history of making fights boring when he wants to. So I think that's what he's going to have to do, is make this fight boring, not be engaging with them, not commit with a certain amount of combinations. He's going to have to use his jab, flick his jab out there, and then be selective in the punches he's going to throw to win on points. But I'm leaning with Joe Joyce. The juggernaut is because I like the persistence of pressure, him walking down his guys. And Parker, I don't know if he can keep him off of him, and I don't know if he's going to do the angles. It's very hard to mimic an Usyk type of style.
Yeah. D-Style, what are your thoughts on this fight, and who do you have winning?
I think I want to touch on what Lukey brought up, and that's the Michael J. White with Kimbo Slice video. So, and he elaborated on this. So this is not my take. This is what he said, but I'll rip it off a little bit. So basically, as we all know, when you're driving down the road and person in front of you hits the brakes, what do we see? We see the red lights, right? The reason those red lights hit is because as humans, it takes us a moment to process something stopping, right? It takes us a process to process something coming at us, whatever it is. But our eyesight, if we see something red flash, we react faster to it, right? Which is why telegraphing punches is a really bad thing in boxing, because you're letting your opponent know something's coming, right? So basically what he did was he had Kimbo Slice put his hand up, and he told him, I'm gonna throw 3 punches. Do not let me hit your hand, right? He throws the 2 punches as fast as he can, but he telegraphs it with his shoulder, right? He does this. So he sees it coming. The third one, he throws it very, very slow, actually. He just goes like this. But it hits Kimbo's hand. The other two did not. And Kimbo's kind of caught off guard. What happened? And he did it again, right? He wasn't able to process the punch coming, hitting his hand, because it wasn't telegraphed. By the time he realized it was there, it already hit his hand, right? That's why we all wonder, how the hell do these guys not see Joe Joyce's punches coming? Because he doesn't telegraph them. As slow as they are, he has a hammer fist jab, as I call it. He just throws it like this. And that's what he was doing at Dubois. It was just coming straight at him. Like that. That's all it was, from a short distance, quick. And it kept hitting Dubois in the eye over and over again until it submitted him, right? He couldn't see it coming if Joe Joyce would have to have told him, I'm about to throw it, in order for him to see it. But he couldn't see it coming, and then we all wondered, how the hell does this dude not see this shit coming? Like, he's not that fast, because it's not telegraphed. So as slow as he is, he's not telegraphed. That's why he lands punches on the Takam and all these guys. All right. Now, whether that's going to work on an Usyk or Fury, who have really good cat-like reflexes, I don't think so. I don't think it will. But it's going to work on most heavyweights. And look, he's with who I call the architect, Ismael Salas, who puts on great game plans. He's really good as a trainer. And they're going to have a game plan for Parker, right? And they're going to be right in front of him. And it's not going to be telegraphed. And I think Parker will do enough to survive. But I think in the middle of that round, this Michael Myers style where he just keeps stalking you and he doesn't stop coming. And it's like, yeah, you know I'm coming, but you can't stop me from coming after you, right? That's basically what he does. He stalks guys, and I think it discourages them. And I think in the middle of that fight, Parker's going to say to himself, you know what? I'm going to do enough to not get embarrassed, but I ain't going to win this fight. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why Joyce is going to win. That's my take. Joyce decision.
Yeah, the funny thing about Joe Joyce, because again, everyone says how slow he is, but you talked about the telegraphing. Joe Joyce throws punches, not like a lot of guys will throw punches from their shoulders. Joe Joyce throws punches from his elbows. He throws punches almost like Wing Chun style. You know what I mean? And they're so subtle. A lot of things he does is subtle. I remember when I was in the gym, a lot of times, certain guys were slower than others. And what the trainer would try to do is to take the slow guys, and he would say, you know what we have to do to make you quicker, we're not going to make you as fast as the other guys. So the only way we can make you effective and efficient is we have to shorten up your movements. So you have to make your movements more subtle, right? So, you can't be as flashy as the other guys. So your shots have to be more compact. They have to be more concise, right? They have to be tighter, right? You have to just you have to put yourself in a position where you're not moving as much. You're moving just enough to get your shit off, right? And that's what Joe Joyce does. A lot of that stuff he does is subtle, right?
It reminds me of George Foreman and Cooney, where he just kind of casually walked over and uppercutted him in the face.
Again, case in point, George Foreman used to throw 6-inch punches, right? So his punches didn't have to travel as far. So in other words, you take the distance away. You take the the amount of space that you need to have to pull the punch. You shorten up the distance, in other words, so it'll get there quicker, right? So that's what Joe Joyce does. It's almost like a guy who's throwing fastballs. The guy's throwing a fastball, so you swing, you get ahead of it. But the guy who's throwing the changeups, the changeup is it's coming out slow, right? But you just can't time how it's coming out because of the delivery. Joe Joyce beats you with his delivery.
That's why you got to be first.
Yeah.
So what Parker's gonna do is gonna have to be first. Make him think about throwing what he's gonna throw, and that being a slow guy, it's gonna that thought process is gonna take a little longer and stuff. But I got to get going, guys. It was a lot of fun, man. All right, guys. Thanks again for having me on. I'll see you guys later. All right,
take care, man.
Beeb, one thing Joe Parker does really well is he has a really good jab, and when he has a lot of success, like in the Joshua fight, which is, even though he lost that fight, that's probably his best fight. He's very, very good at kind of like pawing and then pumping a jab. And it's like there's a line of defense you have to get through. And what's very discouraging for me going into this fight, in the first Chisora fight, that jab was not active and that jab was not deceitful for the opponent. Chisora felt very comfortable going into that range, and he wasn't very afraid of having to think because something was coming back. And like you said, Joe Parker also is a guy that's a timing guy. He's going to turn over a punch that looks like a feint, and then he might turn it over, and it's going to be painful, and it gives hesitation. I'm worried that he's losing a step of that going into this fight.
Yeah. All right, so we'll do the last topic. This is going to be one of our cap, no cap segments that we've done recently in these shows. We're going to talk about these pay-per-view buys for Canelo, Golovkin III. I know we talked about it offline, but let's talk about this whole 550 to 575 pay-per-view buys in the United States. Is this cap, no cap? Lee, cap, no cap?
What was that?
I said, is this true or false? Cap or no cap? These pay-per-view buys that Dan Raphael was reporting. Your opinion?
I really don't know. I don't know what to think. Dan Raphael is a solid reporter. He's solid sources. He's just repeating what those sources are telling him. So I don't have any reason to doubt that. I did see other reports saying that it was over 1 million. If you count other sources, but frankly, I don't know what to make of it, heads or tails or whatever. But the truth will eventually come out.
Gotcha. Lukey, cap or no cap of these pay-per-view buys reported by Dan Raphael?
I mean, to be honest, I don't really care because it's not my money. So it's like, I don't care.
What about the journalistic integrity?
I mean, is there journalistic integrity in boxing? It feels like if you're a real journalist, you should probably find another sport because the journalistic integrity in this sport.
I'm trying to press you, Lukey.
Well, I mean, like, I respect everyone here, but I'm saying, like, boxing is not like, I don't think we're getting like the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism coming. They're like, oh man, I just got out of this. I've been this highly touted journalist, and I was debating about being a war correspondent, going into medical research. But you know what my calling is? The standards in boxing. I want to tackle this. I mean, it's like I see a lot of boxing news being broken as memes on Instagram. So it's like, I don't know. Like, I think that boxing right now, news, if you can say something loud enough and people repeat it, it's now true. Does that mean it's true? I don't know. But it just seems like the game now is say something, have 5 people say it. Well, now it's a conversation piece.
There you go. Cap or no cap, D-Style?
I think I'll call it a cap just because whether I don't know the motive or the knowledge of Dan Raphael. I just know that I think either he had the DAZN numbers or the non-DAZN numbers, right? Or one or the other, and he didn't have the whole thing. So I will say cap.
Ring, cap or no cap with these pay-per-view numbers reported by Dan Raphael?
I would say they're cap because I was given the numbers beforehand. And the numbers were what I estimated weeks before. I said, I don't think this is going to do 1 million. I think it'll do just under that. I think it'll do between 7 and 9. And the number I was given the day before, it was what eventually came out. As far as Dan, I don't want to question his character, so I won't do that. I will just say he's relaying whatever he's being told. Now, whether or not what he's being told is being told to him in good faith, or are they deliberately giving him bad intel? Or are they only giving him partial information because the pay-per-view had 2 different distributors? DAZN was one, Barstool was another. Did they give him the Barstool numbers without the DAZN numbers? It's a lot of different ways it could break down. But ultimately, his numbers, yeah, that's cap. That's cap. Canelo Alvarez sold 800,000 pay-per-view buys with Caleb Plant. You're trying to convince me that he can't sell more than that with a more well-known guy in Golovkin, who has his own fans. Yeah, that's cap, bro. That's cap. It did well over that.
Yeah, I speculate, and this is just my opinion, just by looking at the data myself, kind of going over it. I think this did roughly around 800,000 pay-per-view buys here in the United States, and the other pay-per-view buys out of that million, I think, were international. In my opinion, that's the way I see it, and I think overall the pay-per-view was a success. I just find it weird that everyone came out and just was rooting so hard against this pay-per-view, but I know why they were. But it's just kind of sad that they were. So it is what it is. All right, guys, that was another great show. I want to thank everyone in the panel for coming on, and I want to thank the chat for chiming in with their comments and supporting us as always. Make sure you check us out next Thursday. And as always, have a great day and be safe out there, guys. Take care.
So.